Hello folks, welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. Myself, two things. One, I promise I'll try not to make such lengthy videos, but if the occasion demands and it is a little longer than normal, please bear with me. One slight mistake in the previous video. Indira Gandhi did have some ministerial experience before she became Prime Minister. I believe she was, and I'm told she was Minister for Information and Broadcasting, probably in Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri's government. So she did have some experience, of shouldering some responsibility and how a ministerial office runs before she became Prime Minister. The present Congress people, do they have anything? Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, anybody? Anyway, now having finished to some extent with the Congress party, let's have a look at the BJP. And please listen to this right through to the end, because it is important to know the whole story, not just a part of it. First, every opposition party keeps saying the BJP is communal. Is it? I mean, is her electorate that dumb or that non-thinking or unthinking? Please note, what law or which law has the BJP ever enacted which was either against Muslims or against Christians or even against Hindus? None. Now the Congress party, from 1947, 1950, Nehru brought this one in Article 30 and 30A. I've mentioned this in my videos on the Constitution. 30A means you cannot teach Hinduism anywhere. And all donations to temples will be taken over by usually the state government. Now, then they brought in Article 370 and 35A, which made Jammu and Kashmir a different country and totally anti-Hindu. Then they brought in the Hindu Civil Code. Why? Where was the need for that? If you're going to bring in the Hindu Civil Code, why was it not a uniform civil code? And then Nehru brought in various Waqf Board Acts. They got stronger and stronger as the years went by, 1954, 1964. But 1991 and 1995, there can be no doubt anymore that the Congress stood only for Muslims. To them, the so-called minority consisted only of Muslims. There were no other minorities. Why? First, they brought in 1991, the Places of Worship Act. All places of worship, the status quo had to be maintained as of 15th August 1947. No changes permitted. And yet the 1995 Waqf Board Act, which gave the Waqf Board supreme powers, and it made virtually Sharia law, the law of this country when it came to land matters and property matters. And you still say that the BJP is communal? I mean, it's beyond me. How? Why? Now the BJP has been struggling for years. In fact, you didn't hear much about anything to do with the BJP. It used to be the Jan Sangh. That's where it began. They had one, maybe two seats in Lok Sabha, if that. Slowly from 1977 onwards, they started building up. Finally, the first government that went the full term came in 1999. Now you've got to understand that there were about 70 years of Congress misrule, which they've had to put up with. First they got to find out where are all these blunders. How were they committed, and so on. Plus, you got an administration which is so steeped in doing all these stupid things, one had to start weeding out the real bad apples. Because if you don't, nothing works. Now, as I said, it beggars belief that our electorate is so non-thinking or unthinking. Every opposition party keeps saying the BJP is communal. And all of them are openly in favor of Muslims, plus their own community. Nobody else. Hindus are the whipping posts of everybody. They keep getting taxed right up to here. They keep getting kicked and penalized and messed up every which way possible. And Muslims get all the protection that they can muster from anywhere, especially from Congress. And yet we call, a person gets beheaded. We don't know anything about it until somebody raises a hue and cry. Then we all hear about it, but nothing gets done. It gets swept under the carpet. And yet we're told that the Hindus are intolerant people. How? When Muslims insist on converting, driving out or killing non-Muslims, especially Hindus, and you call Hindus intolerant? And if the BJP blatantly says at any time, which they haven't yet, that look, it's time Hindus got a fair deal, what's wrong with that? Secularism, the only secular party there is the BJP. Because they include not just the Muslims and other minorities, but Hindus as well in our scheme of things. So what is wrong with that? Hindus have been penalized and stomped on and messed about with ever since the Mughals came and took over. The Mughals did it, the British did it, and now that family is doing it. It's about time all this stopped. You see, all these accusations, and what are the achievements of the BJP? They gets rolled over and swept under the carpet. How many people realize how much the BJP has done under Modi ji in just 8 years, compared to what the Congress did not do or did not do in 67 years? It's mind-boggling, and yet, no, the BJP did it. No, they're communal. What communal? Now, you see, one thing I've never been able to understand, not now, but for the last 60 years, since I was a very young person, all we hear about is Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and now Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. Did you know, for instance, who was the driving force behind All India Institute of Medical Sciences, or AIIMS as we call it? Do you know anybody? Anybody knows? Ever heard of our first health minister, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur? She was from the house of Patiala, albeit she was a Christian, not a Hindu or Muslim, because her mother was the daughter of a preacher. She not only went around looking for donations for this AIIMS here, so that people need not have to go to the UK for treatment. They can get it here. And that's how the first AIIMS came up, with donations even from countries like New Zealand. They were the major contributors. Eventually this lady spent a lot of her personal money, which is a far cry from today, when most politicians loot the exchequer and put it in their own pockets. Here was a lady who used her wealth for the benefit of others, especially the poorer sections, for health purposes. Right? Now you see, in 67 years, the Congress governments have managed 7 equivalents of AIIMS. In 8 years, the BJP has increased that to 23. And given time, they hope to bring it up to 50. So that every state will have one. They don't have to keep running to Delhi or one or two other places. The Congress bothered with health? No. And yet you say, oh, they did everything. Now we haven't heard of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. I haven't heard her mentioned anywhere since 1958. And for somebody who did so much for us, don't you think that is a shame? Now it's this particular government that has given due reverence to people like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Sardar Patel. Here's another one they can go in for. And there are others like this. People who have helped India in its early stages. Where are they? Are you telling me that there was only that family and nobody else? Sorry, I can't believe that. Now you see Rahul Gandhi on his Bharat Jodo, so-called Jodo Yatra. Is he Jodoing Bharat? Or is he getting it all into little pieces? Or is he part of the Tukre Tukre gang? He's spending 19 days in Kerala, a little place, but only 2 days in UP, which is the biggest state in India. Why? Because, all right, why did he go from Amethi, where he's been returned as a member of parliament for 15 odd years? Why did he switch to Wayanad in Kerala? Because the people in UP had got sick, tired and fed up with it. He did nothing for his constituency. And he's done nothing for people in Wayanad, except show his face. That's it. You see, Wayanad is also almost 50%, Kerala is almost 50% Muslim. Now you have your answer. He thinks a Muslim population will give him everything. Maybe they have. But it's worth remembering, the PFI, the Popular Front of India, which is now banned, was based in Kerala. Does that ring a bell somewhere? And that PFI has been behind every demonstration anywhere in India. Be it your hijab, be it your halal, be it in West Bengal, be it in Northeast Delhi, be it Jahangirpuri, Karnaul, in Rajasthan, anywhere in India, they're behind it. We know that, but so why did he go to Wayanad? I'll leave that to you to think over. And yet they're trying to tell us that the BJP is a communal party. Friends, let us remember something. Every opposition party is communal. The only secular party is the BJP. Why? You look at UP. Akhilesh Yadav. He wants to be elected and he has been elected. He gives a good chunk of what he literally loots from the UP exchequer to the Yadav, that's his clan, and some more to Muslims, nothing else. Similarly, Lalu Yadav gives a lot to his own, many to his own family members, much to his own family members, and some to Muslims. Nobody else. TMC in West Bengal, same thing, mainly to Muslims. Telangana, again, is almost a Muslim state. Kerala is virtually a Muslim state. Maharashtra is beginning to go that way. Rajasthan, same thing. Muslims get all the protection, they get all the help needed. The Congress, since 1947, has been driving into our thick skulls. If you want the government of India to do anything for you, convert either to Islam or Christianity. If you remain a Hindu, you get penalized, you get stomped on, you get denied, you get punished, and you get taxed to the hilt. That is the message I have observed personally. And I've been around for almost 81 odd years in this country, mostly in this country. Now, why? Because they have been busy literally stealing the country blind. Most of these parties, they won't pay taxes, they'll siphon away taxes, they will send it to Hawalas, operators, to send it to Dubai, from there earlier to Swiss accounts, now to places like Antigua, maybe St. Kitts and other tax havens, like Cyprus maybe, Seychelles, Mauritius. They will pay commissions to all these Hawala and illegal operators, including people like Dawood Ibrahim. But they won't pay to the government of India, which is where it should be going. And then you wonder why the government treasury is empty. And when the BJP tries to stop it, they keep screaming and demonstrating. And the worst part is that our people actually help them do it. The Congress since the 1920s have learned one art perfectly: how to stop all forms of production, how to bring the country to a standstill. But the shameful part is they're still doing it. They're not doing anything to help us progress. And what was License Raj? What the British did, these guys just reinforced and rammed down our throats even further. We've been independent in name only on paper. We're still in the colonial mindset because that was what our leadership was, colonists. Where the British left off, these guys took over. There were one or two who were capable, but they were stomped on. One, for instance, was Jagjeevan Ram. He may have looked horrible, but either he had a great deal of luck or ability. Whichever ministry he was in came up trumps. But we never got him as Prime Minister. Now, I'm mentioning all this because the BJP is trying to undo all this. It takes time to find out, where are all these blunders? Once you've identified it, how do you get rid of these blunders? How do you correct them? In quite a few instances, they have to change the laws. They have to repeal acts which the Congress and other governments passed. Some examples are like this. See, they've already abrogated, for instance, Article 370 and repealed Article 35A, which were in the Constitution, thanks to Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, one of the reasons why we don't hear about Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, she was totally against the Hindu civil code because she was in favor of a uniform civil code. Ergo, Nehru hated her for that. You don't hear about her. Then Article 30 and 30A. When you have those two, how can you claim that the Congress party is secular? It's the one thing it is not. Coming along with your Waqf Board Acts 54, 64 and so on, then you have the Places of Worship Act. You know that many temples were destroyed and mosques built on top of them. And yet nobody can do anything about it because of the Places of Worship Act, 1991. And yet the 1995 Waqf Board Act seems to have abrogated that or made it useless or redundant. The Places of Worship Act, I mean. Because now the Waqf Board starts claiming the land on which a 1500-year-old temple stands in Tamil Nadu. How? Islam wasn't even around then. It wasn't even born then. Then they go to Gujarat and claim the land on which the Somnath temple stands. Aren't we getting a little moving from the sublime to the ludicrous? Is there no end to this sort of rubbish? Has that act given the Waqf board so much supreme authority or so much power that it has become the law? I mean, here's a glaring example of something that needs to be repealed and repealed fast. Now let's see. Most of the Congress states, Congress ruled states, what are they? Non-entities virtually. There's been no progress there, really speaking. And yet, where are the BJP strongholds? Gujarat, very high up on the development scale, which is a BJP state. Uttarakhand has just become a BJP ruled state. UP has had one stint, 5 years. It's taken time to get law and order together. Mr. Yogi has started the development process, which he could not do unless there was proper law and order. Even Muslims have understood that, look, this man means business. He's not for Hindus or against Muslims. He is for the development of the state. If you notice that, notice what Mr. Modi is doing for India. Mr. Modi has also understood that India is not 230 different states. It's one country. I know we hear screams, unemployment, big problem. Yes. But it's not something that Modi ji or the central government can do anything about, because all industry is in the states. It is their baby. You can't blame Modi ji if there's unemployment, especially if the PFI and the others bring in 60 or 70 million Bangladeshis into this country, who take up those jobs with all help from these Muslim organizations, which means 60 or 70 million Indian citizens are out of work. And then you say, there's a big problem. Yes, who's created it? The opposition parties. Are they willing to do anything about it? No. Because this is their power base by keeping people unemployed. This is what happened in Jammu and Kashmir. The stone pelters were paid. The stone pelters and demonstrators in these other states are paid by these opposition parties. But if they were employed, they wouldn't bother. So why do you blame the BJP? Now, the BJP needs to rule one or quite a few other states as well. Why? Now, you've got to remember this. First, it has a majority in Lok Sabha. But to enable them to pass laws and acts and to repeal bad ones, they need a majority in Rajya Sabha as well, meaning the upper house. For that, they need to have their government in certain other states also, to get that particular majority. Otherwise, the Lok Sabha can pass an act, the Rajya Sabha would reject it. Stymie, again, stalemate. Now, the electorate must understand that all these regional parties are messing up the calculations totally. These MPs are not bothered about the country as a whole. They are bothered about their own little states, their own, how shall I put it, their little frogs in their own ponds. They cannot think about the whole picture, only a little part of it. That is why they must understand that the BJP needs a helping hand. The Congress held sway for 50 or 60 years. It's only in about 10 or 15 of those 60 odd years that they've had to go in with a coalition. The rest of the time, they were supreme. They did nothing, and yet they got the votes. Why? The education policy was such, it kept people illiterate or it kept them uneducated, totally non-thinking. Unfortunately, they still are. Something essential like milk is out of the reach of 80% of our population. Why? Why do we need milk? Little children need it for brain development. I explained this earlier in one of my other videos. I explained much of this also in videos about the Constitution. There is no secularism as long as the BJP is out of power. It's the only secular party there is. All the others are biased. They are communal. And the Congress has been dividing the country, Muslims and non-Muslims, from the beginning. Now the other parties are doing the same thing. Except with the Muslims, they're adding their own clan. So please don't call them secular. They're not. Let us begin to think a little. With all this hoo-ha going around and all this backbiting and stupid acts and calling the BJP sort of communal, what have they achieved in 8 short years as opposed to what the Congress did in 67? The other opposition parties don't mean a thing because they never did anything for India. Right? Let's see. First thing, the CAA and the NCR. They have to implement that and quickly. The builders are now under some sort of control under this RERA Act. Earlier, they did what they liked. There was no control over them. The Ram Mandir, a thing that's been going on for over 100 years, has finally been solved. Once and for all. It's been laid to rest. Now, they've also built something like 30 million homes for people. Affordable homes. Who's ever done that before? Nobody. 9 crore or 90 million toilets. This is something no other government had even thought of. There's some sort of privacy somewhere. A stable government at the center. When was the last time you had one? Was it way back in 1970 or 1984 or so? 1980? This is the first one since then. Then Article 370 was abrogated and 35A was repealed. A huge achievement because now Jammu and Kashmir are an integral part of India, not something added on or to one side. Low inflation, a huge drop in terrorism, a very welcome drop. Now then, the Congress in 67 years managed 7 AIMS, that is the equivalent of All India Medical Institute of Medical Sciences, only 7. Now the BJP in 8 short years has increased that to 23. Given time, not that much more time, they hope to get that up to 50. So that people don't have to travel long distances from wherever they are in any state for treatment. They can get it in their own state. There are 35 new airports in India, and at least one more coming up in UP, Jewar, near Delhi. 180,000 kilometers of roads have been added in 8 years. That's quite something. The big help, or big leap has been in defense production, self-sufficiency in defense. We used to be huge importers of all sorts of equipment. Even handguns used to be imported. Now we actually have turned the corner and started exporting weapons, weapon systems, missile systems. Other countries have shown a great deal of interest. For instance, Tejas. Tejas itself, the light combat aircraft, has its own story. It started off, believe it or not, in 1983. And it just dithered and stumbled along until around 2004. Then, until about 2000, after Kargil. BJP government then decided to give it a push. Whereas before, if something went wrong, they sit and twiddle their thumbs under Congress government. This particular lot, including Mr. Vajpayee's government and Modi's government, and said, get off your behind and do something. If there's a problem, solve it. Get on with it. Earlier, I think was it in September this year? About a month ago, the first LCA or Tejas improved version was inducted into the first squadron was inducted into the Indian Air Force. And Malaysia would like to buy a whole lot from us for the same thing. The Americans are hot and bothered. Why? So the Europeans. Because they were hoping that the Asian countries would be their market. The Philippines wants to buy our missile systems. You got anything more to say about that? In fact, the government, the UPA government even delayed for 10 years the ordering of handguns for the defense services. What are they going to fight with if they don't have even basic weaponry? And then you had Rahul Gandhi coming out with, we don't need an army. So who's going to defend our borders? Our farmers and our youth. Do they know which end of a gun the bullet comes out of? Well, do they? And if the safety catch is on, how do you take it off before you can use that gun? All that needs training. Today's weaponry is not something of 50 years ago, the wooden 303 rifle. You go bang, then you do this, put in another bullet, this, and then by which time the Chinese have put 50 or maybe 100 bullets in you from an automatic gun. We're not in that age any longer. We kept talking about digitalization. And Mr. Chidambaram says, you want to go somewhere in a village or something and order 10 or 20 rupees worth of stuff, he's going to have a machine. Yes, they do have machines. The largest number of digital transactions for finance, purchase and so on is in this country. Now I'm an old man, yes, but even I have started ordering stuff online for my groceries and things like this. I mean, okay, it was helpful, especially during COVID times. That's another thing. Which other government in independent India's history has had to deal with something like COVID? And yet this government has not only coped with it, it has embarked on a huge vaccination program, which was decried by all the opposition for reasons best known to themselves. And we have sent millions of doses to 70 other countries. And that too, free of charge. Whereas the other countries deal in death and destruction, we try and deal in saving lives. This is the Modi pattern. So please don't tell me that he is communal or the BJP is communal. It's the others. Look at them closely. Put them under a microscope and see what they're like. What have they done for 70 odd years or 60 odd years? There's a new educational policy. They reduce corporate tax to give industry a push. Now, there were only 7 IITs and IIMs. That number has doubled now. And you say that the BJP does nothing? We're the second largest solar power generators in the world. Soon, hopefully, to become the largest. We're the second largest in the world in steel production. A far cry from Nehru's days. We're the 4th largest automotive market in the world. That's saying something. We're the world's largest healthcare system, Ayushman Bharat. What more? The Congress created a debt with the oil companies of something like 2 lakh crores, which this government has had to pay with interest. It has been cleared. You know why all these petrol and diesel prices were so high to pay for that. I mean, it has to be paid by us somehow. We're not all like Rajkumari Amrit Kaur who load it and therefore we pay out of our pockets. People have been using it and driving around. Okay, you have to pay for it. We're the 5th largest GDP power in the world, up from number 11 on the UPA. Failed businesses, they started privatizing them and making them turn the corner. The banks, their NPAs have reduced drastically. There were over 300 million probably new bank accounts. For the first time, the large proportion of our population is beginning to understand what is a bank, how do you operate a bank account, how do you open a bank account. That was out of the reach of most of us. It's coming in. Why? When all these subsidies started going directly into people's bank accounts, it saved the government of India 58,000 crores every year. Every year, mind you. Now you think where that was leaking into. Whose pockets was it going into? You see, the BJP has not been sitting still doing nothing. They've also given free rations to about 800 million people. Thanks to COVID. Anybody else does that? No. Now there is some of the things that the BJP have done, they've achieved. And for the first time, certainly in my life, that's about 80 odd years, that an Indian Prime Minister or leader as a group, a leadership as a group has said, show me what you can do in India. You want to do something here, we'll help you do it. Earlier, as Narasimha Rao had said, if you think you're intelligent, competent, capable, get out, go to Silicon Valley. We don't want you here. We only want mediocrities here. The result, 30 or 40 of your biggest corporations in the US and everywhere else have CEOs of Indian origin. Now you think if they'd been in this country, working in this country, where we might be today. They were driven out by our own people. So, for once, I mentioned this in my book also. Way back, you probably don't remember it. When is our leadership going to tell us or ask us, show us what you can do in India, not outside. Show us how we can help you to help us. You see, that seems to be Mr. Modi's mantra. We've got to help each other. You help us, we help you. That way. Well, thank you for listening, folks. I'm sorry it's another long one, but there was a great deal, a very big story to tell. I hope I've cleared some of the misconceptions which the opposition parties have conjured up out of thin air. All fake news, yes, but most of us don't seem to understand it. So please go through this and see all of it. Pass it on to your friends, your relatives, your groups, ask them to pass it on too. This government needs help in all the states, a few more states in their care, because once they get a hold in those states will come up. You can be sure of that. They will not remain down in the doldrums as most of the other states have remained for 60 or 70 odd years. Thank you, folks, and subscribe if you like, but please pass it on to your friends and groups. See you next time.